Okay, welcome back to winter work on the boat. So this is the next part of servicing the heat exchanger on my Cummins 8.3 engine. And I've got the heat exchanger home. I got it on the bench, and this is going to be the part where I'm going to be inspecting it and cleaning it and servicing it and see what the condition is, so we can get it back together and make sure we have good, reliable performance on it. Okay, so this is going to be our starting point. I've got the heat exchanger up on my workbench. And I've got the end cap going here. And let's look at what condition it's in so far. So right away, we can see in the end cap, we've got a good amount of scale in here. This is where this is the port where the raw water comes in through this hose here. This is coming from directly from the aftercooler, and then it's going to go through the heat exchanger. So it's going to go in here, up through this side of the cap here. It's going to flow through here and back out, and then out this and dump out into the exhaust to cool the exhaust. So even though I do always do a freshwater flush after every run, we do see some scale built up here, which is going to have to be removed. Then if we move over to the heat exchanger core itself, we can see the scale here as well. We can see up on this part some blockage. Let's get a tool and start looking at that. So if we look at some of this material here, yeah, it's blocked pretty well. I mean, it's not super hard, but it's definitely scale that's got to get removed. Now, I don't know if this is from just buildup or from before I purchased the boat. The owner did not remove it, do freshwater flush. And then if we come down here and look a little bit closer, looks like we've got some shell type material possibly. Let's see. I don't know if that's just mineral or shell or what that is, but this is all got to get cleaned out and make sure that this is all flowing freely. There's no indication of any overheats on the engine, so this wasn't affecting the performance, but definitely due for a cleaning. So what we're going to do for this is, that this is an O-ring here. This core is going to have to get removed. I'm going to have to take this end cap off and see how difficult it's going to be to remove. If I'm going to have to try to do something to press it out, or if it's going to be relatively easy. We'll find out. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the cap from the coolant reservoir. And then I'm going to begin to remove the other end cap that isn't off using a 13mm socket. And as I go along, I'm going to be putting those bolts in a magnetic parts tray so they don't get lost. There we go. And look at what we find in here. We've got a couple of zincs stuck in here, which are definitely not from me, because I've accounted for all my zincs. These must have been from a prior owner or someone that serviced this. All right, not something you want to have in there. So we're just going to toss those. Let's look at the condition of this. So kind of what I see so far is got a lot of salt in here, and we have a fair amount of buildup here, kind of like the other side. So these are plugged. So this thing's definitely going to have to be cleaned, probably soaked in some barnacle buster or something similar. There's a set of O-rings on here that seal the cap to the heat exchanger. I'm just going to start by gently prying them off. You don't want to damage the seating surface. So there's one. And, let's see. And here's two, and that's crusty. That's definitely going to hold that in there. Got a little bit of crustiness on there. And these O-rings, if you take this apart, you always want to replace these. You never want to reuse them. Over here, I'm going to take these bolts out. I put them in here when I took it off the boat so I wouldn't lose them. But they're really only going to be in the way for now. So depending on how hard or easy this is to get out, there's a couple different ways I can clean this. If it doesn't come out easily, what I might do is just put the other cap back on with an O-ring and then just pour in some barnacle buster into here and let that work on the inside of that and cleaning it, and then dump it out and put some fresh in there to make sure it's clean and then press it out. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to see the best way to try to get the core out. I'm going to start by gently pressing on it to see if it'll move, which it really isn't. So next I'm going to turn to my soft face dead blow mallet to try to press it in a little bit, and I am getting some progress there, but at this point it's stuck, so I'm going to start to tap on the core on that middle bar there. And that wasn't a great idea because that's bent a little bit. I'll have to straighten that out, unfortunately. That was kind of dumb. Now this is starting to move through. We can see over here that it is starting to come out there. And it's gone in a bit here. So this might actually work. Hey, look at that. And just like that, the core's out. This is a hell of a lot easier than when I did the after cooler 2 seasons ago. That was very difficult to get out. If you got a workbench, these things are great. You drill a 3/4 inch hole and then they fit in there and you can brace stuff against it, which is what we're going to try to do now. So put that in there and make sure they're seated. And then I can pull against that. Because there is a ridge piece in there around the bundles to keep them all together. And that flange or ridge looks like it's got to come out a specific way. Alrighty, so I have the heat exchanger core out of the housing. This was a little bit difficult and tricky to get out. So, you know, as you saw before, it did slide out pretty easily. But the problem was that these ribs here, there's 2 sets of ribs, support ribs on the heat exchanger. Now these hold the bundles, but they also provide some support inside the housing itself. So these ribs were hanging up on the support on the inside of the housing. So they were hanging up here from what I could see, kind of hitting on here, but also I think they were hanging up on these ribs here. So there's one there and there's one in here. And when I was just pulling straight this way, these ribs here, I think, were catching on here and not being able to come out. So at first I thought, well, maybe this is a problem because this housing is very cold. It's 25 degrees here in New York today. It's been on the boat. Hasn't really warmed up much. So I used a heat gun to warm up the housing, thinking maybe that was an issue. I also put some grease in here, around here, thinking that maybe that was the issue. But what ended up working for me was, as the housing was coming out, or the core was coming out this way, supporting it from this side, and then reaching in and lifting up on this crossbar on the end. So this is the forward end of the boat, this is the aft, and this is where the inlet and the outlet water is. Reaching in here and supporting this and kind of rotating it a little bit, and then lifting up to get it over the humps, the ledges on the inside of the housing, is what allowed me to get the core out. So what does our core look like? Pretty good. It's a little bit, looks a little bit dirty. There's a little bit of schmutz on it. You can see kind of some yellowish stuff on there. Now this is the coolant side of the system, and the inside is the raw water side, where we've got that, again, where we've got that build up in there that we'll have to clean out. So now I'm going to have to get some barnacle buster to clean out these tubes, make sure it's ready to go, and we'll just wipe down the inside of the housing, and we should be in pretty good shape. Okay, we're ready for the next step in servicing our heat exchanger core, and you're probably wondering, what's the deal with this black bag? Well, in here is the heat exchanger core. And what I've done is I have done a little bit of descaling. There's a lot of heavy scale in here. I manually removed a little bit of that. I made sure all of these holes were open on either side so nothing is completely plugged. And I need to put in some descaling solution. So what I'm going to use is some strong cleaning vinegar. Basically what we need to do is get some acid solution in. So I have two types. I've got a 30% and a cleaning strength, because there was only one of these in the store. And this is going to hold about a gallon. And I need something to contain the liquid so that I actually don't have to buy too much of the cleaning vinegar. So what I've done is I put it in this very heavy-duty garbage bag, and I have taped it up so that it's pretty snug, and the solution is going to fill this bag, but not balloon out too much. And I did a trial run. What I found was that it did leak a little bit, and it kind of ballooned up. So also what I've done is I filled up this bucket with water so I can submerge the core in there, and the water pressure is going to hold the bag shut and not balloon out too much. And then I can pour the vinegar solution in the top here. I'll pour it up, and then when it gets near the top, I'll just cinch this up and put a little piece of tape on there to hold that shut and soak the whole thing. Leave it for a while and see how it does. Might have to put in another solution, run it twice, maybe 3 times to get it all clean. And hopefully the vinegar solution is going to do a nice job to remove that scale. So the other thing I should note is that in the first trial, there's some sharp edges of the bottom of the heater core, heat exchanger core, that punctured the bag. So what I've done so that these edges don't sit down on the bag and tear it is I've taped a little piece of 2x4 inside here, so it acts like a little pad, a little spacer. So the core is going to sit on that, and it's not shouldn't cut the plastic bag, and that should keep the vinegar in there. All right, I'm actually going to dilute this strong vinegar down a little bit. The 30% probably is fine. I did not do so well in chemistry, so all the dilution stuff, I'm not going to bother to try to figure that out. But I am wearing my, wow, that is some strong stuff. I am wearing my goggles because I don't want acid in my face. I got my gloves on too. So we're going to just dilute this about 50%. I've got 2 quarts of water in there already. And I'm going to put in not quite 2 quarts because I want to be able to pour this in. And then all right, now before I pour in the rest of the vinegar and seal this up, I'm going to show you, I'm actually getting some really good action on this vinegar already. And this is from the tubes, from the material, the scale, I think on the bottom, it's bubbling up through those tubes. So this seems to be working pretty well already. Okay, so it's the next morning, and the core's been soaking overnight. My little garbage bag soaking trick didn't work out nearly as well as I had hoped, so let's show you where we are now. So this is my bucket of vinegar and water. You can see it's pretty green from the bits of corrosion that came off, and let's see if I can stir this up a little bit. Might be able to see a lot of the debris that soaked out of that. So there was a fair amount of junk in there. But what happened was with the garbage bag, these sharp points just punctured the bag and it leaked. So I ended up having to just take it out, let it soak in there, standing up, and then flip it over part way through. So it's been pretty well cleaned, and what I've done off camera is, that this is the core on the workbench now, and what I've done is I've rodded this out or run a brush, scrub brush through it, like a little tube brush, to get it out as much debris as I could. There's still a couple of tubes that have a little bit of scale on them. That's just pretty tough, so I'm just going to let them be. I think it's done well enough. And the same thing with this side. I routed out that side too. And what I used was some that brush and then some baking soda in there to try to have a little bit of an abrasive and clean it up, and then flush this well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean up these mating surfaces. There's a little bit of a ridge here. So what I'm going to use is I have what's called crocus cloth. This stuff is super old. It was my father's. He had a whole bunch of stuff left in his toolbox when he passed, which I grabbed, and I've been slowly using it. This is a very, very fine abrasive. I don't even know if you can get this anymore, but it's a fabric backed super fine abrasive. I'm just going to carefully clean up these surfaces so that they slide in easily, and then we should be good to go for an easy reassembly. Just a tiny bit of pitting in here. I think that's going to be fine. That's going to sit inside the cap. These are nice and smooth too. I think these are going to be in good shape. Now I'm prepping the end cap for reassembly by buffing the inside mating surfaces with that crocus cloth. Then I'm going to work on the outside. The strong vinegar took off a lot of the paint, so I'm going to clean it up with a heat gun, a brush, and a razor blade to get it ready for repainting. Okay, here's my setup for reassembling things. I've got my cap, I got some marine grease, a little brush to get it in the right spots, and this is what I've made up for a pressure testing rig. So this is a 1/4 inch threaded pipe with a T. I've got a pressure gauge, a valve, and then a chuck for my air compressor, and that's going to fit in there, and I'll screw that in, and then I can put about 20 pounds of air in here in the heat exchanger body. Once I have everything back together, let it sit, and if it holds pressure, we're good. I've also got a couple of 1.5 inch pressure test plugs in here too, to keep the air in, and then I put the zincs back in, so it should be all nice and airtight. And then this is the kit that I have that I've gotten from Seaboard Marine. This is the QSC heat exchanger O-ring kit. It's got a set of 6 O-rings in here. That should be everything you need to get this back together. Here on out, I'm going to give you a time lapse of the reassembly procedure. And one of the most critical aspects is to make sure you use enough quality grease on all the mating surfaces. This is going to help prevent corrosion going down the line and make sure that any future disassembly will be easy and the core will slide out. So I've put some on the housing already, and now I'm continuing to put grease on the mating surfaces of the core itself. Make sure you get a good layer in there. You really can't put too much in there, and that's really going to help safeguard your core later on down the line. Now that it's all greased up, we can start inserting the core into the body of the heat exchanger. So I've gotten it slid in there. It's getting a little bit bound up here, and I'm not exactly sure the best way to get this in here, so I'm going to turn it up on top. Maybe gravity is going to help it slide in there a little bit, but at this point it's a bit of a trial and error. So I'm figuring right now I can put a little bit more grease on those ribs there. Maybe a little extra lubrication is going to help slide it in there, but that's not really working so well. So I turn it around again, slide the core in from the other direction, and this is going to work quite a lot better. It's not getting quite all the way in there yet, so I'm going to take out my mallet again and that block of wood, and very gently, these are soft taps, working the core all the way into the housing so that it's sticking out on the other side, and the caps are going to clear and mate up properly. So I did a little test fit there. That's working and fitting well. So now I'll add some more grease around where the O-ring is going to sit to make sure that's properly lubricated. And then we'll grab the O-ring out of the C-board kit, glove up so I don't get too much grease on my fingers, grease up the O-ring, slip it on, and then put another layer of grease in there. Again, you really can't get too much grease on these fittings. So now I'm going to get some more grease. I'm going to put it around the mating surfaces of the end cap there. Make sure that's all nicely covered, got a good layer in there. Now that this is all ready to be assembled, I got to go grab my socket and my wrench again and my bolts that I've saved. Put on the cap, start threading in the bolts, and then grab my 13mm socket and start tightening them up. And then you just go around, tighten up each one so it's nice and snug. With that side done, we'll just spin the unit around and do the same thing on the other side. Good layer of grease in there, make sure you got plenty, can't overdo it. Grab our O-ring, make sure it's greased up. Put another layer of grease on the top of the O-ring as well again. Grease up the cap. Spread it around liberally so you don't get too many pockets and it's a nice even layer. And then install our bolts and make sure that they're nice and snug. And with that, we're ready to start our pressure test. So I'm going to insert my pressure testing rig into that port, and because that piece is a little bit too small, I had to remove the pressure gauge and then reinstall it. Alrighty, I've got my compressor all charged up. I got my air valves all set in place here. Got this turned off. I got my my hose here, and I'll just connect it up, and then I'll put in air to about 20 or 25 pounds, and then let it sit, see how it does. Oh, and since we're working with compressed air, safety goggles. Now I just want to pause here and talk about these plugs for a minute. This top plug, the silver one, I would not recommend using that type. It has a much lower surface area to grip the inside of the tube, and when I pressurize the heat exchanger up to 30 pounds, it actually blew out and hit my hand and left a pretty sizable bruise on there and dented my wall. The one with the red and the black was much more secure and had a better grip, so I would highly recommend using that type of test plug if you can find it. Now I'm connecting up my air supply from my compressor. If you didn't have a compressor, you could use something like a bicycle pump and build a different type of adapter. But I've got this all set up. I've been to open up the valve, and I'm slowly increasing the pressure. There we go. We're right at 21 pounds. All right, we'll bring that over. So yeah, we're right at 21 pounds. I know it's upside down, but you guys should be able to see that, and we'll see how that what that says in the morning. Alrighty, so here we are next day. I've got my results from my pressure test, and initially I thought the core had a leak because overnight this pressure dropped to 0, and was afraid I was going to have to get a new core. But before I did that, I wanted to make sure that all these connections were tight. So I used a little bit of soapy water on a brush, and I found 3 leaks. One here in this zinc, and one here in this zinc. And when I put some thread sealant on them and made sure that they were tightened up, repressurized, and this has been holding all day. So I know the core is good. Service is complete now. And next thing I want to do, just because I want it to look pretty, is I'm going to clean up the body of the heat exchanger and put a fresh coat of spray paint on it, so I'll get rid of some of these chips and things and help the engine look nice and clean. After that, it'll be back to the boat, and the next part of the video series will be installing it on the boat. I didn't get a video of the painting process, but a few pictures will show you what I did. I taped over the important parts on the opening so I didn't get paint on the inside, and then used some Ace brand gloss white to go over the entirety of the heat exchanger with a couple of coats, and then let it dry and set up. And here's the final result. I taped over the inlet and outlet pipes so that the hoses will fit on there without a problem, and I've got a couple of coats of paint on there. Looks even better than brand new. So after this, I wrapped it up with some shrink wrap and towels to make sure it wouldn't get damaged on the way down to the boat, which is where it currently sits, waiting to get installed.